Today is December 15th, 2016. We're continuing our series. My name is Elder Stephen Paul. I'm Faith Still from Niagara Falls. We will be recording down there in Lancaster, South Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. We're dealing with the real elements of the universe: science, truth, and love. One thing that has come up that has gotten me involved in ever getting interested in Christianity was the Shroud of Turin. You'll have to look at all the reports and study yourself on this burial cloth. I don't believe that by evidence that the Garden Tomb fits the picture of where it was actually buried, for the simple reason that Romans do not have thousands of people buried in such an area or crucified in such an area, because it would bring blood into the city, and it wouldn't be what they want. They wanted to be up in the mountain where everybody can see him being crucified up in the Mount of Olives. So I believe also, since it was near there, that there's a spot up there where the actual burial site is. They believe they actually made the tomb a little bigger just to fit the 5'11" body of Jesus in there. Now, about the Shroud of Turin, how come I don't always say it? Have we thrown in the possibility of witchcraft? Night Templars were around. Because people don't understand what witchcraft cannot do. It's a very high type of witchcraft, indeed. But it's not outside of the possibilities of actually producing an effect on a cloth. So there's a lot of things that people don't want to know, because it's a sacred thing, and we want to see. And yes, the carbon dating tests. To say that they got an area that was a patch is very difficult, because it's just not there. And then why don't they just go ahead and carbon date another piece of it? No, the carbon dating clearly depicts that something's going on and depicts this date. And this is very correct for that time period when that type of witchcraft was produced, and very effective. And once you get into a certain level of witchcraft, now, I'm not going to go into everything about demons and what they can and cannot do, but I'm going to say one thing: the devil comes to kill, destroy, and steal. So you're not proving the metaphysical. Good step in the right direction. Devil doesn't like to go there. And the Shroud of Turin is definitely metaphysical. And number one. And it proves not only who he was and what he was, it proves the very resurrection. You got to understand, the perfect creation is God. God makes perfect. God can make a perfect creation, and all things are made by the perfect creation. The perfect creation is Christ. Through all things are made. All the physical world is made through him, by him, for him. He's the architect and background. He's the Word. And the Word has an expression in the flesh. The burial cloth would not want to be idolized. It is not meant to be that perfect thing. Why I say that? Because for one thing, it would be mentioned in the scriptures and would be moved as part of the early church. It would be an important item to be moved along. And it wouldn't just be for the end times. It would be known in a much greater way. But putting that aside, Satan does funny things. Let me give you some scriptural backing behind this. When we're looking at, let's say, the Paul, the great apostle, and how he moved out, he said, these men, the evil spirit said, will show you the way of salvation. You know, that's true. Yes, it is true. But Paul said, no, that's being said by a demon. There were things that said, Son of David. Many times they said, we know who you are, the Holy One. That's true. And if you cast all evil spirits, and people don't like to talk about this, but the evil spirits speak, and they don't mention the name of Jesus. Now, that's interesting. No other name except that name. And they will admit, when you use this name of Jesus, that he won and they lost. That tells you something about every other religion. I'm talking about the relationship with God. But let's get back to the Shroud of Turin. Yes, it's some beautiful things that the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And the beautiful thing is that he went too far. And going by too far, he stole and he got caught. Because when this was done, they didn't have the technology like we have today. The technology proved this is very, very much more about what Jesus is. They didn't have to prove it. In those days, you either believed or you didn't believe, and the church just accepted. So you didn't have to prove Jesus. He was just accepted in that world. What they did want to do is prove a relic had power. And a relic having power was very important to the church in those days, because they could get money from it and so forth. So it had the wrong motives in back of it. Idol, make no image. And this image being made is not comfortable. Statues are not comfortable. This is not what it's all about. The commandments are clear. You just don't make images of man, and this is an image. And it opens the ground for dirty work for Satan, and he stole. So you can tell a lot about the original author and the reality of the resurrection. He went too far. Beautiful information about who he was and that there is a resurrection. Now, you can't really own God. And with this shroud, it almost gives you like that special power and you can own it. So that's another problem with it. A lot of problems with it. The weave was not existent in that day. But you got to look at the carbon test. Now, the blood. How do we know it's his blood? Yes, there's probably some blood. There could have been blood because of the satanic sacrifice that was going on. They'd say it was a piece of the heart. Interesting thing. I'm not going to go too far with this, but I'm just saying it's very, very unlikely, with all the evidence, that it is actually his cloth. But it is very likely it was done by witchcraft. A lot to be said on that subject, but it definitely proves that there's a spiritual world out there. And we need to start thinking in spiritual terms if we're ever going to solve some of these problems. We'll get to another issue here to have a little bit of time. And the issue is what we call, when you talk to rabbis, the issue is the kind of Messiah that the Jewish people are looking for, a carnal one. Why? Because Adam came from the earth. He was breathed in, but the Jewish person has to take him. Either he's totally from the earth or he's totally from God. There is no in between for a Jewish person. He's not like, I'll get into that as I have before about the mix of races, but the Jewish person, descended directly from Adam, really believes in the land and in the future of a earthly kingdom. He's not focused in on heaven. The Christian should be. So the perspectives of somebody to solve the soul and the spirit of a man and the corrupted, fallen spirit is more of the world's ideas. For a Jewish idea, they want to rule the planet. They want somebody to say, hey, you're going to be the man in charge. You're not going to have any more problems. But that doesn't solve the problem. The problems are much deeper and require soul and spirit transformation. And that is not part of what Jewish people are generally looking for. That's a problem. They don't want to solve the problems of all the world. They want to solve the problem of their race. Now, it's a deeper issue. You need a perfection. And they don't want to include the fact that the spirit of God is perfect, and that the Elohim is more than one, and that God is not a number. He just creates a father today, a son. There's so many scriptures, but it's not convenient for somebody who is the most powerful, intelligent tribe of the nation today to accept a Messiah who's going to give them equal power in earth and in heaven. There's a lot of issues. There's a blindness. And of course, that blindness is there for a purpose, so that Gentiles will receive this Messiah. But the evidence of the Messiah is a long, drawn-out process, understanding all the prophecies in the Bible and many other things. But the Shroud of Turin is one very interesting thing that indirectly proves Christ, even if it is witchcraft, even it is. I'd use the example of a Leonardo da Vinci painting. Somebody once stole it, somebody else might have stolen it, but eventually it traces back to Leonardo da Vinci and tells a lot about the events and the times of that day, even if it was stolen. So I don't deny many of the very accurate things and the metaphysical wonder of it, but that type of thing was not done by a painting or a sculpture. It was done by something supernatural, but not necessarily Christ himself. This is Stephen Paul Dunphy, and we'll be going into more of these subjects about truth and love. And the most important thing is look at love. What love is, what the human family is, and how it's based on a higher state of life, especially as we get into these heavenly themes and these hellish themes, we begin to see a bigger perspective on what love really is. We'll be dealing with more of the subject of mercy and judgment. Thanks again.